Welcome, everyone. My name is Caroline Colas, and this is the Positive Psychology Hour, a collaboration with the Whole Being Institute and the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Today is our part 2 of our series with Dr. Sherry Kelly, and we're going to be learning on how to use positive psychology in everyday life. If you're looking for practical ways to apply positive psychology in the most common stress-inducing situations, you've come to the right place. Joining us today is Dr. Sherry Kelly, a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist with more than 30 years of experience in the field of both child development and health psychology. She earned her doctorate in health psychology from Yeshiva University and is a former National Institutes of Health and National Cancer Institute Fellow in psycho-oncology and neuropsychology. She's based in West Hartford, Connecticut, but currently in Florida, and she's best known for her research with teens and young adults on resilience, hope, and cancer survivorship. Sherry, welcome to the call. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Caroline, thank you. We're having some technical difficulties getting it sent to Phoebe, so I had sent you my slides on Tuesday.
Okay.
And
okay, I'll use those.
But I wanted to just share something with you. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me today. I'm sorry that this was the first time this has happened, but I'm using.
Well, you know what, Sherry, I think it's a great time to use as an example of, because this happens to everybody, right? It happens to everybody where you're planning one thing and something that's maybe not in your control, hello COVID, happens, and then we have to shift. So what are the strategies that you're employing at this very moment when your PowerPoint isn't quite there? You tried 3 times to get onto the call. I'm just curious about your own internal strategies here.
That's great. So actually, thank you, Caroline, for asking me that. I employed or deployed my PAR strategy, shooting PAR. All right. I'm actually looking out on the golf course as we speak, which is not under snow. I'm actually looking at it, and it's called shooting PAR, and it's prepare, accommodate, and reframe. So I prepared in advance with the help of Phoebe, thank you, Phoebe and Caroline, and we're going to go like, I'm just going to tell you what we did. We prepared in advance on Tuesday by sending my slides in advance to Caroline, and in case a glitch happened, that's to prepare. I'm mentally prepared for not having internet or not having the Zoom call because I have plenty to share with my friends here on the JCC Power of Positivity Hour. And then I accommodated, which that's the accommodate stage, which is you're able to shift positively without getting upset. You're able to call on your friends for support like Caroline and Phoebe. You're able to deploy different strategies for making it work, which we did. And now I'm going to reframe it. So instead of it, oh, this was a horrible thing that happened or what a bother, I'm reframing it, say, I'm so lucky to have Caroline and Phoebe helping me with the support aspect of it. I'm so grateful to all of you in the gallery for being patient and joining me today. And what a wonderful group of people. And we have so much to share even without slides.
Yes. And you were talking about this. That's amazing. It's talk about walking your talk, Dr. Kelly. Yeah. Awesome.
We all have to do. So
yes.
Phoebe has the slides up, and if Phoebe, if you can just like move to like, I just think it's like, just the next slide, because for those of us, thank you. Why should we, next slide, what is health, I'm sorry, the next one. Okay. So what is positive psychology? And what are we talking about? And can we code for a better future with positive psychology? And so, some of you were on here, or many of you may have been on here Tuesday, just a little recap. So positive psychology really, I think, really got launched big time in the 90s. I think, it was starting to bloom in the 80s, and then it really got launched in the mid 90s when Martin Seligman was the head of APA, and he made his, I just think, transformative talk to the psychological community, basically said, hey guys, we can do it much better. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, instead of focusing on the disease model of psychology, which so many people had bought into, let's take the best of what we know and help our clients move forward in positivity. Let's build on strengths instead of focusing on what's wrong. Okay, and so he incorporated, I believe, the very best of existential psychology, insight-oriented psychology, dialectical psychology, certainly cognitive behavioral therapy, and used a lot of the wonderful philosophies that were tied into psychology and the evidence-based strategies to formulate, I think, a better approach to working with people who are in distress, people who may be lost in their life, and certainly people who are at a stage of making transitions or needing to move from one life stage to the other. So if we just go to the next slide. Okay, what is positive psychology? Well, this is his quote. The aim of positive psychology is to catalyze a change in the psychology from a preoccupation for fixing what's wrong or fixing what's negative in your life to building upon your best qualities in life. Okay. And I'm going to say something here. You know, positive psychology isn't a fix-all. It's not something that is intended to replace other approaches to psychology. I use positive psychology as a clinician myself in conjunction with, oftentimes, other types of therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, which, because I do a lot of work with people who've been struggling with medical challenges. And so for me, combining CBT and positive psychology is very effective. Same with parenting coaching. I do a lot of parent coaching, and I combine the CBT practices with positive psychology. In working with people in aging, I combine a lot of existential psychology with positive psychology. So there's ways that you can utilize it. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so it's a scientific study of what makes life worth living, and our study of strengths and virtues that enable us to work together interpersonally, not just within thinking about ourselves, but really it's a dynamic relationship between each other that we're fostering with positive psychology. It's cultivating the best within each person, and it's founded on the belief that we want to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives. And there's a meaning and there's a purpose to that. So we did a lot the other day. We reviewed some effective strategies, including the PAR strategy that I introduced: prepare, accommodate, and refrain. We also introduced some real life ways to deploy positive psychology when you're feeling stressed. And we talked about some practices that might put you to the test, but also give you a chance to practice out some of these practical aspects of positive psychology. So 2 of them that I gave you were, one is try not to say something negative for 24 hours. Did anybody do that? I just want to pop in and see, did anybody do that? And we'll open the gallery.
That was difficult. Joanne and I were, last night we were talking and she said, how's it going? I said, oh, it's terrible. Because I could hear myself think something, like want to complain about something or whatever. And then I had to catch myself. I was like, no, I have a game. I'm going to have to report on this tomorrow. How about anybody else? Please put in the chat what your experience was.
Did it work? Were you able to do it, Caroline? Were you able to do it?
I was able to do it, but I kept thinking about what you said, which was plan for it, right? To anticipate, I believe is what your word was. Okay, so yeah, anticipate.
Okay, and there's a reason why. One of my new slides had that, and I'm gonna have to come back and do another seminar on the neuropsychology of positivity. But there's a reason why we say anticipate and why anticipate works. Because the part of the brain that's activated in positive psychology and in the very core tenets of positive psychology is in the frontal and prefrontal cortices of the brain, where we deal with anticipation. That's where the brain works anticipation. So we're talking about the part of the brain that has to do with the biggest, I guess, tenets as well as pillars of positive psychology, which are you promote coping, tag on to meaning and purpose, cultivate meaning and purpose in your life, using your character strengths, self-compassion, having courage, planning what you want to do, positive communication, positive relationships, fostering positive emotions. So all of these really important tenets of positive psychology are processed in the area of the brain that also lights up meaning and purpose.
Wow. That's really significant.
So
So,
I actually have a little cartoon of where that is.
right. So knowing my values and knowing why I'm doing this, for example, I was thinking about that, what you were talking about on Tuesday about showing up for your daughter and wanting to model for her how to respond in a crisis situation. I was thinking, well, like, what am I modeling for my team, right? During COVID, and how can I step into that leadership position? We had some responses in the chat here about, and I believe some folks said that the chat wasn't open. Can you guys try it now and see if you can respond to everyone now? Like Ellen said that or Elaine said that she switched from complaining to her husband to strength finding, and it worked. And Bambi said, I tried and I caught myself saying out loud to myself, that was stupid. And I heard it. And I think I have been clean since then, which was Tuesday.
Oh my gosh.
And Elaine said she switched from complaining to strength finding. Oh yeah, that's right. I heard that. Want to review PAR, please, because she wants to write it down. Don't worry, we'll go over that. And then Susan wanted to ask a question. She said it might not be within the scope of what we're talking about, a scope of positive psychology, but it feels like while the tools are wonderful and helpful, it doesn't seem to leave room for feelings. When you had tech glitches, perhaps you felt frustrated. I'm not suggesting getting lost in the feelings, but to at least acknowledge what we feel and then move on to the tools. Otherwise, it feels like we're dismissing an important part of the human experience. Let's clear that up, because that's an important point.
Yes, thank you for bringing it up. So we brought this up on Tuesday. So positive psychology is not invalidating feelings. It's not ignoring feelings. Your feelings are important. It's knowing how to manage reactions. And one of the things we talked about in our earlier slides, Phoebe, do you want to bring that up? It's like, I think 1 or 2 slides after what we were just on. I don't know if we can do screen share or not. And if we just go ahead, it's the slide that says about, there it is. This is not about toxic positivity. And I want to be very clear on this, because emotions are important, and we want to address those. So this is not about ignoring your emotions. And we don't want positive psychology to be confused with toxic positivity. We don't want to invalidate. We don't want to make people feel guilty for their feelings. We don't want people to, feel like we don't understand your trauma or your pain. That's not what it's about. And what I try to tell people very simply for applying positive psychology, you cannot really control your emotions, and emotions are not bad, and they're not, to be judged. Emotions, I think, are best served to look at as alarm systems or an alert system. And if we can shift our perception, I love how Dan Tomasulo always uses that line, shift our perception from just looking at the negative to another point of view of understanding, well, what are my emotions trying to tell me? If I look at emotions as an alarm system, what's it trying to tell me? Okay, does that answer it?
Yes, and let's unpack it a little bit. Let's say that we're receiving stimulation from our environment, both internal and external, all the time, correct? And emotions are some of that stimulation. In other words, it could be a response to something that we see, hear, feel, sense, whatever. But they last about what, 90 seconds?
Yes.
Okay.
And then,
So as you said, it's like a signal. So I get a signal. And then what happens is that humans tend to attach meaning to that signal. And what I hear you suggesting, and what I just want to clarify is, let's just look at them as a signal and then acknowledge them and choose, okay, what is this telling me? And then I have a choice to decide how I'm going to respond. Am I on close?
yeah, yes.
Okay.
And I think I just want to say something. That's a really huge part of practice in positive psychology. That's a big part of therapy, but that's also a wonderful gift that you can give your children or grandchildren, is that very important lesson, is that what are your emotions trying to tell you?
Beautiful. I also think, Sherry, and I wonder what you think about this, it's oftentimes what positive psychology has given me is that I sometimes think what happens when I feel an emotion or have a negative thought, that I don't go far enough. And what positive psychology has taught me is like, okay, I acknowledge that, and then I'll ask the question, what else could be true? In
Yes.
relationship to what you're talking about, which is what's the perspective? And the reason for that is because I know that the brain has a negativity bias. So I know that when I'm getting this information, it might be skewed negative. So with positive psychology, it's not that I'm going to go into what you say here, signs of toxic positivity. I'm going to go into the balancer, the one that levels, almost the common sense that says, wait a second, what else could be true, so that I can come back to center.
So we had that negativity bias slide up on Tuesday. I'm glad you brought that up. We do, and it's bioevolutionary. And sometimes I think it's very fruitful and fun to look at ourselves in terms of our evolution and how the brain evolved, which is, to be on edge and to look for danger and to react first in caution. That's the first thing we do. And there's a positive psychologist who Phoebe and I know, and she might be on here today because she was on Tuesday, Karen Oster. I don't know if Karen's on today, but Karen has this STOP program that she employs. So I don't know if Phoebe, if you're on, if you can type in what her STOP, she has a STOP program, which I love. And that's
What's Karen's last name?
Oster. Is it Oster, Oster, Phoebe?
Yeah.
You stop, you take a breath, you observe, and then you move on. The P is, I think, proceed. But
yeah,
stop and you take a breath. And that was sort of also last week we talked about Linda Wallace's care response. Catch yourself. Catch yourself in the negative response. And one of the things we talked about last week was, hey, setting goals is great. Wanting to change your behavior, it's great. Changing your behavior is actually really hard. And so these are little steps that we take in changing the behaviors to make our lives more positive and to make the way we approach life and each other more positive. You have a choice.
Yeah, let's also talk about, which you're so good at negative conclusions. Like we have two things that are going on, right? We have this emotional hijack that can happen, but we know that it only lasts about 90 seconds, and we can name it.
If Phoebe's on, if she can go to the slide of negativity with the guy in the Velcro wall, that's Rick Hansen, the negativity bias. But yes, and with this, I want to bring in something that's very important. I really believe that there are cultural differences in negativity bias.
Wow.
Okay, and I want to be respectful of that and embracing of that. because people from different cultures, I think, approach happiness differently. They approach negativity differently. Okay.
Hmm.
And sometimes, a friend of mine who's a comedian kind of jokes about it, when my mother, who was part Greek, was very forgetful as she got older. And he said to me, she forgets everything but a grudge.
It's great. So, well, you know what? And brain researchers talk about that. They talk about the impact of our environment, the impact of our culture, the impact certainly of our biology, of our environment, of our culture. Because think about that a minute. We feel an emotion as a kid, and then we express it, and then there's something from the outside that says that's not appropriate or that's not how we do that. So we do have conditioning that teaches us that.
Very, very much so. And there's some, again, if one of the things, she's going to find the slide with the negativity bias, thanks, Phoebe. But, if you look at culturally, again, I'll just, do my Greek reference. We always say poo, 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 something good happens or whatever, poo, poo, poo. I had, there it is. There you go. I had a wonderful Jewish friend who used to always put a penny in the tzedakah box when something happened good. We have different cultural customs and traditions, and maybe we have a little bit of, what can I say, traditions that we do that might seem very old fashioned, but they're kind of ingrained in us. And
well, it reminds me of this, Sherry, if I can use this example. In dance, right?
you come back to
the way that you move oftentimes is similar to the way that your parents move, unless you have been trained in a sport or in dance or something. So at a certain point, as you grow up, you get to say, wait a second, how do I want to walk?
Right. Well, that's brilliant.
This my gait. And yes. I think what I hear you saying is, okay, we've got our cultures, we've got our rituals, we've got our negativity bias, and then we can actually start to co-create with all of that as we evolve and make some choices and decisions. And if we look at that in relationship to the thinking, into negative thinking, jumping to conclusions, taking things personally, catastrophizing, mind reading, maximizing and minimizing, externalizing, right? We have that. We've got the negative emotions, or the heavy, I don't even like to call them negative, the heavy emotions. And then we've also got the heavy duty thoughts, negative thoughts as well. So it's about managing all of that and having a choice, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was beautifully said. And, and ironically, there might be some people on here, and we can actually have a whole other discussion on this. But philosophically, when you get into this discussion with people, do you deserve to be happy? Why is happiness valued so much in our society? Now, when other people look at Americans, and I've talked to psychologists literally from many, many different countries, and I've worked overseas, and they'll say, well, you have an obsession with happiness in America. What is it? So, you have to kind of, you respect that, you embrace it, you explore it. And in many ways, we are, because we've been an industrialized nation, because we have many blessings in this nation, we're able to, think about the things that are in that top of the Maslow's pyramid. When you look at the self-actualization, we're looking at that. We're not, worried about where our next meal is going to come from, most of us, almost all of us. So, we have this luxury of thinking about self-actualizing and being happy. But I will say this, internationally, when I work with people from other countries, there are certain commonalities that people want to latch onto to thrive in life, not just survive. And I think one of the compelling points about positive psychology is that so much of the research has been conducted internationally. And when you look at the VIA character strengths, for example, which is the character strength survey, which I've got a slide about, but that survey has been tested on people from 50 nations. So, I think that that is, that says something about the robustness of the research that's been done on positive psychology. And I'm always
Right.
trying to make my presentations come from a place of being respectful of different cultures and different countries. So that's where it's coming from.
I really appreciate that. And also, I think it's all about choice, right? It
Yes.
really is. I mean, to anyone on the call, if you would like to choose to be unhappy, we're not going to stop you.
Well,
We're just, we're going to say, no, but because sometimes, like Maria Serwad talks about that, sometimes it's okay. I throw myself a little pity party, right? And it's okay. And that's a strategy too. But I don't let that go on for very long. And there's a reason for that. And as a health and wellness professional, and you from a psychologist point of view, it's draining on the body, it's draining on the system, and it over time, it takes a toll. So I wonder if you comment on that.
I want to comment. Can we just move ahead to like the 20?
Absolutely.
Right? Like this 29 slide. There it is. There it is. I just want to share something with you about that. Very important. There are decades of research that show an association between life satisfaction and what we call health mediating and health bolstering thoughts, not just behaviors, on longevity. And in general, people that are happier and or participate in behaviors and cognition also that promotes well-being stay healthier and live longer. They engage in healthier behaviors. They're not taking as many risk behaviors. They're getting the social support they need, and social support is very much linked to better health and longevity. So when you ask, well, why be happy? There are some real reasons why you should take a positive path towards life. So when we look at character strengths, and there's 24 character strengths, you guys can take the free character strengths survey. It's via character.org. And it's about 15 minutes to take, 20 minutes, it's free. And this will show you what your signature strengths are out of the 24. The character strengths, I like it better than personality tests, for example, which have made, by the way, a resurgence among kids. I always try to tell them to, younger people, take the VIA character because you're going to learn a lot about yourself. It's really based on your skills, your interests, your talents, your inner resources, your inner energy, and your positive personality qualities. What you can learn more about yourself and how you can propel yourself forward in a positive way. So we can go to the next slide. And how do you put these strengths to work? Well, this is how you realistically do it in everyday life. You look at your top 5. Look at, what do you think about yourself? Is that what you see in yourself? Is that what others perceive in you? If you're creative or spiritual or, trust or honest is important to you. Is that what you think others see that in you? Choose one activity consistent with your top strength. So if you're creative, your creativity strength, what do you do that's creative? Do you dance? Do you paint? Do you write? Do you ever think about developing a goal and plans for applying your strengths? Well, am I really utilizing my strengths at work? I use this a lot with teachers and managers. So I ask people, who are in the working world, how might you be using these strengths when you're teaching or using your strengths as a manager? If you're a parent, how are you using your strengths in parenting? And what kind of activities can you use to really promote your strengths? We'll go on to the next slide. And this is by Ryan Nemec, who's been on, he's been with you on JCC, right? He's great.
Yes, he's amazing.
So how do you apply your character strengths at work and in everyday life? Well, character strengths is not just about knowing yourself, but it's also a way of connecting to other people. And it's helping you strengthen your relationships. It's working on interdependence. Individuals express their character strengths in different ways and in different circumstances. So you can think about what I'm really strong at and how to better communicate in that style. And let's go to the next slide. And I love, this is Ryan and Ruth, also Ruth Pierce's the C model. And I use this a lot with teachers and managers at work. So this is a way to actually apply character strengths and positive psychology in the real world of work or the real world of managing people or teaching people. And I also use it in parenting or grandparenting if you're a grandparent. So SEA, S stands for spot the character strength. So for example, I might say, you know what, I spotted your I spot that kindness. Explain, I saw kindness today. I saw that you were kind. You helped somebody today. You helped someone who was having a problem. Caroline, I spotted kindness in you and patience this morning with me when I had the computer glitch. I really saw how your patience was at work, how you also you were creative and trying to figure out different ways of helping me solve the problem. And appreciate. Caroline, I really appreciated that you shared your kindness and patience and creativity with me today. So I just put the C model at work with Caroline.
That's fun and that's quick. Spot, explain, and appreciate. It's a great way to strength
really,
spot.
Oh my gosh, this really works well if you're working with, trying to do something at home with your kids or grandkids. It works well at work. We don't validate each other enough. We don't validate, we don't show appreciation enough. And I actually have a slide on that coming up, so I'm going to have to move the slide. So there are two pathways that you can utilize positive psychology. One is the well-being pathway, which we talked about, better health and better behaviors, and then coping with adversity pathway. So character strengths have a way of buffering and bolstering, buffering the bad, buffering the stressors, and then bolstering and pushing us up and helping us move forward by using our strengths. So we mitigate and mediate adversity while also bolstering mental health by using our inner resources, our coping strategies, attributing meaning and purpose and better adaptation to change and to the challenges in life. So we're just going to go on the next slide. So this is what I was talking about. So this is from Dan Tomasulo. So positive psychology is a shift of perception. People can be more hopeful by looking at things in a different way. We're not trying to ignore the negative or invalidate your feelings. We're trying to balance them out. Okay, next slide. Thank you so much for doing this. Oh, I don't know if Phoebe's there. There it is. Okay, so this is what I just said. So one of the best ways to bring a little bit of happiness in your life is through appreciation. We know the brain lights up with gratitude. I had a slide on that, but it's not here today, but I do have a slide on that. So recent neuroimaging studies, really starting in 2015, have shown that gratitude and appreciation actually light up your brain. And it's in that anterior cingulate I was talking about. If you were wearing a headband right now, it'd be right where your headband is. It's a very important part of the brain because it connects the emotion part of the brain to where we're going, moving forward part of the brain. It also lights up on a part of the brain that's very much connected to and next to relationships. Meaning and purpose is very much tied to relationships. We don't live in a vacuum. So acknowledge your blessings, acknowledge your strengths, appreciate your support. And I love this quote because yes, it's like appreciation is the highest form of prayer, for it acknowledges the presence of good wherever you shine the light of your thankful thoughts. So realistically, if you're feeling down, if you fall into this moment where I almost feel your blood chemistry change, there's actually been neuroimaging studies that show that one way to change the blood chemistry is actually through gratitude and appreciation. So if you can shift and just take a dose of gratitude while you're thinking, you will actually feel yourself unburden a little bit. If you can practice that, it would be a great exercise. So we can go to the next. We've got it. There it is. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Phoebe. Yes, gratitude lights up the brain. And there it is. There's the end. There it is. There is our anterior cingulate cortex. See that little headband? Some people say it looks like a horseshoe, but if you were wearing a headband, it'd be right under your headband. There it is.
Is that considered the prefrontal cortex still?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And there it is. Correlates with feelings of gratitude. And this is different than the reward center. Okay. For you cynics out there in the audience, this is different than, oh, it's just activating your reward center. Because like if you appreciate somebody, you get a reward or they say thank you or they give you a cookie. That's not it. It's not the reward center. So we can go on to the next slide. That'd be great. There it is. So grateful brain showed activity in two primary regions, the anterior cingulate cortex and the medial prefrontal cortex. So gratitude is not only about reward, it involves emotional processing, interpersonal bonding, altruism, morality, and relationships. I'm so glad we have this. Thank you, Phoebe. Should we go on
And
to the next?
Sherry, in relationship to depression, does
Oh, yeah.
depression, in fact, because we were talking about it on Tuesday, just how much anxiety and depression has increased. Are we looking also at the prefrontal cortex, or are we looking at the entire brain? How with depression, or is
Okay, so fMRI studies of depression and anxiety is very interesting because it's much more, it's not as focused in one area region. You can see it especially like in PET scans and fMRIs of certain types of depression and anxiety. It seems to have more of a global effect. And when I look at fMRI studies, it's actually further down deep into the brain.
more limbic, more into the amygdala, that area?
Yes, more into the limbic system. Exactly.
Okay.
So if I always envision it as like a Tootsie Pop, and down in the Tootsie Roll in the center of the Tootsie Pop is the limbic system. And that's where
Thank you. That's really helpful.
we can go on the next. Okay. So, keep going up, keep going up, keep going up. Oh, there it is. Okay. So, it's the next slide. This is just, okay. Okay. There it is. Here you go. Here you go. Thank you. So these are some big takeaways to model positivity at home, in the workplace, and beyond, because we're talking about how do we apply positive psychology in everyday life. So number one, validate your emotions and those of others. Understand that you cannot fix it all or solve it all. Understand what, your emotions are alert systems or signals for something. And that by trying to explore your emotions, you might better able to manage your reactions. Okay. I had a slide in here and I'm not sure it's here, but it might be the next one, where I play a game called the What the what not why game. And in my, I don't know if it's here, but we'll go. But remember that happiness arises, I was going to say, from, altruism, gratitude, appreciation. That's one thing that we've learned about happiness. It's not just about feeling the reward center, right? I think that's one of the most compelling things we found out about research. So happiness just isn't about getting things, right? It's a lot about giving things. It's about giving. And reframe the negative into insightful thinking. So, instead of saying, well, why do I always feel depressed? Why do I always feel so sad? Now let's turn that on its head and ask ourselves what? We're going to move from why to what? What do the times I feel sad have in common? What do the times I feel depressed have in common? What are the triggers that make me feel sad? So we're moving from the why do I feel so depressed, to what is it about this depressive feeling that is common with other times, or what is it that's triggering it? Or what do the times feel like, and what could I do that might make me feel good right now or make me feel better? What could I do to help myself? So instead of wallowing in the why, we're going to move forward into the what can I do? And what strengths do I have? What are my character strengths that might make me fuel out of that or push forward with that? So that is, when we say we can't fix it or solve it all, no, but we can reframe it and take a different perspective of our emotions. And then stop yourself, catch yourself. Do the catch yourself, what Linda Wallace has. Is this thought joyful or useful? Is it negative or is it positive? Well, if it's negative, encourage yourself or encourage others moving on from a place of negativity and hurt. Move on from that negativity. Reframe negativity into insight. Okay. And I will tell you, we have a lot of pressure on us right now. We live in a modern world that seems to be 24/7 of information and technology. And, being able to be anything doesn't mean you have to do everything or be everything. And I'm just going to follow up with one more slide because I'm going to open it up to questions. All right. So remember, takeaways. Happiness arises from wishing others to be happy. Invest in your happiness. You deserve it. Not by buying things, but by giving and teaching and sharing. So remember, your brain is lighting up more in that gratitude band of your brain rather than the reward center. Release people in your life who don't make you happy. Unhook those people who are negative. And I had a really good quote in there, but it's really about forgiveness isn't about letting go, but it's more about unhooking people so they don't bring you down. Maintain a solutions-based approach to real-life challenges. And remember that worry does not fix real-life problems. Okay? Gosh, hold on. We're going. Oh, there it is. Forgiveness. We just had a question check. Is not letting someone off the hook. It's about unhooking others and releasing ourselves so they don't bring us down. And I'm going to end on that, Caroline. Chew on
Great.
that.
Chew on that. There's a bunch of comments that I want to add. And one is, Anne had a really wonderful question. And let me see if I can find it. Is a positive approach equivalent to happiness? Can't one be positive and not truly happy or unhappy?
Yes. Well, this is the whole thing about happiness, which is a whole other topic. So happiness, there's a wonderful quote, and I will tell you very simply, happiness is the intersection of purpose and meaning. As a scientist, okay, happiness, our construct of happiness might be different in a commercial sense than in a psychological sense. Okay, Disney is the happiest place on earth for some people, right? We've been taught as consumers what what is happy. Isn't that scary? We've been trained to think of happiness as consumers, which is very different from how we're really wired.
Wow. You know, it struck me, a lot of us have been dealing with the snow, right? And being inside, the pandemic, being inside more and more than we have. And I've been finding myself doing things like listening to the radio, making crafts, baking. And I thought, you know, back in the day when they didn't have all of the consumer stuff that they had, what did they do? They read, they told stories, they made things. And then I was talking with a researcher in Parkinson's, and she's a neurologist, and she says, when we make something, when we are giving to someone else, the chemicals in the brain literally change.
Purpose and meaning. Yeah. And you know, we are we feel confident. We've got that flow. We're challenged, yet we also feel in control and confident. And I just want to scroll down to something, our happiness balance. I want you to think about this. This is just something for you to chew on. But this is Moga Dot's slide that I took from Moga Dot, who I love, 1 billion happy. And you think about, you know, happiness in terms of the difference between your expectations and how you expected life to behave and what happened, what really happened. So the difference between how you expected life to behave and how it really happened. And thinking about what are your expectations?
Right, and as we look at, hasn't some of this research been done sort of in looking at people at the end of their life, looking back on what their regrets have been and what they really felt was important and wish they had done?
Absolutely. And I think one of the best studies, I always like to mention it, is the Valiant study, George Valiant study, the Valiant study from Harvard that looked at people, I believe it started in the late 1930s and went through the 1980s. And they followed people's happiness and life satisfaction. And here's the upshot. The people that were most satisfied and happy in life had good relationships, solid relationships, had meaning and purpose in their life.
Wow. And in relationship to positive psychology, it sort of reminds me of exercise. Like, you know, some people that will come to me and they'll start saying, you know, well, if I exercise, do I have to keep exercising?
All right, so this is a good thing. So
Yeah.
yes, we talked about
the answer to that question, by the way, if anybody's wondering, is yes.
Yes, so you actually practice for positivity. And I actually there's a slide on that. So if you want my slides, there's a slide on that. So yes, you make an effort, you actually think about practicing for positivity, and soon it becomes natural. But remember, there's that negativity bias in our brains that keeps us safe, you know, danger, trouble on the tracks. Okay, so we've got to actually practice for positivity.
Beautiful.
There.
And then there was a comment in the chat about families. You know, my family's sort of both kvetching, right? And how that it can feel good to kvetch and kind of complain, but, and that's true. And we also want to watch it so that we're not doing that habitually. Could you talk about the neural circuitry as we end? Because we can get into habits. For example, we can get into habits of like, okay, this just happened, I'm going to reframe, or this just happened and I'm going to kvetch and complain. And either one, it's not that it's a choice, but one is going to take us in one direction, and that has certain consequences or questions or things that are going to happen and impacts, and the other has a different set of consequences and impacts. And I think that's a really wonderful way to look at it, right? It's not that, because what we're going to do in life, or at least what I find I do, I'll speak for myself, is I tack back and forth.
Yes.
Like I'll find myself over here, and then I'm like, okay, how do I get back here? And if I'm too far over here, you know, I come back over here.
Yes, that's a really great analogy. And I'm going to give you another analogy with that. Yes. So it's like a sailboat, and you're tacking back and forth and you're shifting it. And you have to also be mindful of any holes that might be in the boat. Because if you have a leaky boat or a lot of holes within you, that are unresolved traumas or unresolved conflict, it's really hard for the boat to move forward.
Beautiful. So I think it's positive psychology can also, what I'm hearing you say, be a diagnostic tool. In other words, I'm setting myself up for success or to feel my life to be connected and meaningful. And if it's not, what I hear you saying is, then it's time to maybe look and see, wait a second, what else is going on? And maybe even seek the help of a professional.
Because if you're really resistant to being positive or resistant to being appreciative or resistant to gratitude, that is indicative of, some real pain. And we want to embrace it and we want to help heal. You can't ignore the pain. And oh, thank you. Somebody put Karen Oster's link up there so you can get her stop maneuver. Which
and the other thing is, again, to use an example of the body, let's just say I have an injury in one place, right? I'm going to have to tend to that. I'm not going to be able to use my whole body because I have to tend to that injury. And then I want to tend to it and heal it so that I have what? Access to my whole body, right? And accommodate. And then I'm going to want to listen to that because that may still be with me or something I need to manage, but I can heal with it.
And I want to just say before we go, tapping onto what you just said, which is so important, Caroline. Positive psychology focuses a lot on agency, something we call agency. Okay. And it involves a lot of, the belief that you have the power, you have more power than you realize in making yourself feel more fulfilled and actually ultimately being happier. You have the agency to make changes in your life. And that is an important aspect of positive psychology in terms of applying it to everyday life, is that you can do it. So, think about when we did this little exercise yesterday of write down 3 things that went well, but not just went well, but what did you do that made it go well? Or what happened that made it go well? Or maybe what strengths did you use that made it go well? It's not just, oh, something's happening to me. I was lucky. I chose the right numbers that day, whatever. I was lucky because the parking spot opened up. It's, what did I do to facilitate that change? Or what did I do that helped it go well? So that's what I mean by embracing the agency.
Yeah, and I think we can forget. I know that people on this call, because I know a lot of you are amazing and brilliant, but the mind tends to forget our accomplishments or dismiss them. And we can think, oh, I'm not that great, or I'm not that much. So we have to, when we start to see, wait a second, what did I accomplish, or what did I make happen, or what was good in this day? And then what did I do to do that? We start to feel like, oh my goodness, I have power. And it's not about false, importance. It's about having confidence to go on. I mean, let's face it, we're in a pandemic. We need some fortification to say that, we can do this.
Think about what went well. Think about what you did that you did for other people also. Think about what you did that went well and that what you did for other people in making their lives better. Think about, 3 things that came out of this experience that are really precious. And I think one of the most precious things is this time.
Yeah.
Right? The time that we had with our families or loved ones, time that we were able to take for ourselves. So with all the inconveniences, try to find, I always say this, I always end my talks the same way. Find a pebble of positivity in every situation, and a mountain of possibilities will arise in front of you.
Beautiful. And I call that mining for the gold. All right, everyone. Sherry, thank you so much. I always learn so much. And everyone, thank you for joining us and for your patience.
Everyone.
And remember, if you are interested in joining the Whole Being Institute's certificate in positive psychology, tomorrow is the last day to join that. Today is what, February 18th. So tomorrow is the last day to join that. It's a 9-month program. It's fantastic. And I hope you will consider it. We'll put, when we send the recording out, we'll put a link if anybody's considering that. And tonight I'm doing Change Your Tagline, Change Your Life with the Handel Group. And it's, yeah, isn't that great? It's exactly what we're talking about. Like if your tagline for COVID is that COVID sucks, trust me, you're going to prove that. If your tagline is, this is an opportunity to, everyone's going through it for me to grow, you're going to prove that. So it's going to be a fun evening, and I hope you'll join me. It's completely free. And I just thank Sherry and Phoebe as well. We've got a couple of things in the chat about next week, some wonderful things. And Phoebe and I were talking about this. I have this crazy idea. I don't know if anybody wants to join me. I want to do a book club, but I want to meet before we read the book. I want to meet before we read the book to talk about the book, about why we want to read the book, and then read the book. And at the end, meet the author. So if anybody's interested in doing that with me, our first book that we would do that with is Don Tomasulo's Learned Hopefulness. And we would start that at the beginning of March, and he's going to be with us on March 30th. Yeah, it's a little bit of, one of my top strengths is creativity. So we're turning it a book group a little bit on its head. But if anybody's interested in doing that, let us know in the chat. Yeah, so great. I get to a lot of folks that are saying yes. Fantastic. All right. Why not do it differently, right?
What is the program tonight called?
It's called Change Your Tagline, Change Your Life.
At what time?
It's at 6 o'clock.
Thanks.
You're so welcome. All right, everybody. You can unmute and say goodbye. I'm going to take us off the spotlight so everybody can see one another. And
Thank
you, Sherry.
bye,
Lane.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Enjoy the
Bye-bye.
snow.
Another
Bye,
great
everybody.
lesson learned. So good. So
Take
good.
care.
You're always
Hi.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you.